Hello and welcome to another tutorial from Tindish. This is going to be part 3 of our little series on how to create a simple coming soon page using HTML and CSS. In part 1 we created the basic page as you can see here with a few calls to action and with a full screen background image that changes each time you refresh the page. In part 2 we swapped out the background image and we replaced it with an auto playing full screen video and added an optional mute unmute button at the bottom. And what we're going to be doing this time is we're going to be using this website as it is at the moment, and we're going to be adding a countdown timer in the middle there, just under where it says new website coming, which will count down in seconds to the launch of the website, launch of the business, whatever it might be. So that's what we're going to be doing today, so let's crack on. We're going to be using the same project files as before. They're available for download on GitHub, so the link will be in the description, and I'll also link the previous 2 videos if you want to have a look at those first. But if you've already seen them or you just want to know how to add a countdown timer to a holding page or any page really, then this is the video for you, and we'll just get straight into it. This is the index.php file that we are used to create this page. Again, I'm using Visual Studio Code for this with the Emmet extension to make writing the code a bit quicker, and the live server extension just so that whenever I make any changes it'll automatically refresh in this web window over here on the right. If you want to know more about them, then there's plenty of tutorials online, so that'll teach you how to use these, but I find the live server and the Emmet plugins extensions rather very useful, so that's what we'll be using. We'll get straight into it. This is our HTML at the bottom, and the first thing to do is to create a new section of HTML where we're going to put the countdown timer itself. So right underneath where it says new website coming soon is where we're going to do it. We'll create a div called with a class of countdown container just to keep everything inside, and it's in here where we're going to put all the countdown timer information. So we'll create another class called countdown, and we're going to give this one an ID as well of weeks. You don't have to have weeks, you just have days, or you could have years and weeks and days. You can have whatever you want really, but for this one we're going to be using weeks, days, hours, minutes and seconds, because I think that's probably quite a popular one. And inside that div we're going to have another div called with a class of countdown digits, we'll call it. There's not going to be anything inside that, and then we're going to have another div with a class of countdown text, and inside that we're going to have the word week, because obviously this is the weeks one, and then we're going to put the plural, the S, but we're going to put it inside a span tag because we're going to be playing around with that a little bit later. So if we save that, you see we've got basically weeks there. There's nothing, there's no digits yet because we haven't put any information in there. I mean, we could put some temporary text in there just so you can see it. So 88 weeks. And then we'll basically just cut and paste these down and add in the others. So we've got weeks, days, hours, minutes and seconds. Days, hours, minutes, seconds. Change that to hours. Sorry, change that to days. Change that to hours. That one to minutes. And that one to seconds. So as you can see there, we've got the basic information that we're going to be needing there. Put too many S in there, get rid of those. Get rid of that notification. So the basic information's in there. It's not doing anything at the moment. That'll be done in JavaScript in a bit, but it's also looking not like you'd want it to as well. So that's obviously where we then move on to the styling in CSS. So we'll go back up to our CSS section. As you'll know if you already watched part 1, typically you would always put the CSS in a separate file. For this, we're trying to make it simple. We're trying to keep it as a single file that you can just redeploy on different sites with a few minor tweaks. So that's why the CSS is part of the actual main index.php file in this instance, but best practice you'd always put it somewhere else. So just underneath the buttons we will start putting our CSS for the countdown timer. So here's we're going to style it all and get it from looking the way it is there, so the way obviously we want it to look here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the countdown timer container, which we called, I think, countdown container. And we're just going to give that a margin of 1 EM and 0. So that's going to give it a margin of 1 EM top and bottom and nothing on the sides. That's just to give it a bit of space between the other elements that are on the page, the new website coming soon and the address bit at the bottom. Just give it a bit of spacing out. And now we'll go on to the actual countdown timer itself. Sorry, it was just called countdown, wasn't it? Now we've got 5 countdown elements here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're all called countdown. So any CSS code that we put in here, it will relate to all of those. So the first thing we want to do, because they're all in a row, which isn't how we want it at all, inline block. What I'll do actually, I'll just change the document type here to CSS, because then Visual Studio Code will give me some coding hints and just make it a bit quicker. So if we change that to display inline block, it keeps them all as they were, but it puts them in a row. What we're also going to do is just put a bit of padding in between them. We'll say 0.5 EM, just to spread them out a bit. Now the countdown digits themselves need obviously a bit of styling. We're going to give them some a background color, and that's going to be the variable that we created before, that we've been using throughout this, which is main color. And we're going to give them an actual color, so i.e. the text itself is going to be secondary color. There we go. So if we save that, you'll just quickly see it's put a background of the main color, and it's changed the text to the secondary color, or highlight color if you like. So obviously we can see it against that background. We'll make the text a bit bigger so it stands out a bit more. 2.5 EM I think should probably do that. Yeah, it looks a lot better. And we'll put a margin at the bottom of 5 pixels, say, just to bring the text a little bit down below the boxes. We'll give the boxes some padding, because they don't look particularly good at the moment. We'll just give them a general padding of 5 pixels and 14 pixels. So that's 5 top and bottom, 14 left and right. It looks a lot better. What we'll also do, because we don't necessarily know what digits are going to be in here, there could be lots of them, we'll apply a minimum, some minimum sizes. We'll apply a minimum width of 2 EM. At the moment, you know, the minimum width and height doesn't really matter because there's information in those boxes, but if we were to say take that information out, as the page will be indeed when it initially loads, you'll see that you get that sort of issue there, which you don't want at all. So that's why we put the minimum height in, and we'll put a minimum width and minimum height in, just so that it doesn't look daft when it first loads. We'll put a minimum height of 1.5 EM I think should do it. Yeah, there you go. So even if the boxes are blank, they've got some minimum heights and minimum widths that they can't go below. So that's for the countdown digits. Yeah, so I think that looks pretty good. There's no animation applied to them. I think we probably should have some animation. Probably make it look good. The way we use the animation, we use in animate.css a style sheet, an external style sheet that gives you loads of animation options and makes it very easy to integrate them. If you want to know more about that, look at the first video where we used it. We used the animate library to animate obviously the rolling in logo and the buttons bouncing up. And we do that simply by, let me just change this back to HTML. On the countdown digits class, we'll simply write animated, and for this one we'll probably go, there's a whole load of different animations you can use, but I think with this one we'll do flipping X. I think that should, must remember to use the correct case on these as it won't work. Yeah, I think it looks okay. That looks quite good, so we'll apply that to all of them. We do only want it on the countdown digits, we don't want it on the actual countdown text underneath, which is why we're applying it at this level rather than applying it to the countdown container itself, because then everything would just flip in and it wouldn't look as good, I don't think. So yeah, that looks fine, I'm happy with that. Let's just get rid of these placeholder text as well, because we don't really need that. Yeah, so that's looking good. I think the animation actually is a bit quick on that. I'd like it to be a bit slower. Yeah, it's a bit too. I think it's a bit too snappy. I think you might miss it, to be honest. So what we'll do is we'll just put a global change to the animation. I'll just put that in here actually. We'll target the animated class, and we'll just put animation duration of say 1.5 seconds maybe. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe a bit slower. I would help if I actually put a unit of measurement on. Ah, there you go. Yeah, I think 1.5 seconds is fine for that. Just think it looks a bit nicer. Gives the animation a bit more oomph behind it. So now that we've done that, let's go and actually populate these countdown text values with the actual countdown itself. Now for this you're going to need JavaScript. The HTML is done, the CSS is done almost. We'll tweak it a bit for mobile using a media query and once we've finished it, just to make it look a bit better on mobile. But for now we will go into the script area at the bottom, and this is where we're going to put our countdown timer in. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is create a variable. We'll call this countdown timer. Oops. And this is going to be a new date. We're going to give it a date, and we're going to use the getTime command. So the date we're going to use, I don't know, just pick a date. Let's say 25th of December 2019 at 0000. There you go, ready for Santa. Soon be Christmas. So we've got a variable now called countdown timer, and it's going to be the date as described there. And like I said, you can put anything in this. You can reuse it. You can change it whatever you want to do. I'll have a look at that a bit more in a bit. I'm going to create a new variable called x, which is going to use the set interval command. And inside there, you're going to have a function. Okay, and you need to put the interval in here as well, which we'll have as 1,000. So what that's basically doing is it's going to create a function that runs at a particular interval, in this case 1,000. The interval units are milliseconds, so this function is going to run every 1,000 milliseconds or every 1 second, which is what we need obviously for the countdown timer to be running. So we've got a function that's going to run every second. We've got a variable called countdown timer. Now I need to create another variable simply called now, because we know the time obviously we're going to, but we don't know what the time is just at the minute. And we do that with this simple text here. So we created a variable called now using the date function, using the date format and the getTime function. And we'll create another one which is the distance, which is just going to be the distance between the two. So that's going to be the countdown timer minus now. pretty straightforward. So at this point it's going to have a value in distance, which is a number of milliseconds between now and the date here. So, you know, being hundreds and hundreds of thousands of milliseconds. But we can use that figure that's in here now and start doing some maths on it and create some other variables for the weeks, number of days, number of hours, number of minutes, and number of seconds. So we'll start doing that. We'll create a variable called weeks. And we're going to use the math and floor there. So what that'll do is it'll do some mathematical calculations here, and floor basically means it'll round it down to the nearest one, which is what we want for the coming soon date. So we'll use the distance, which obviously is the number of milliseconds, and we'll divide it by, for the number of weeks we're going to have, because this is milliseconds, we need it to do it by 1,000 milliseconds times 60 minutes. 1,000 milliseconds times 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours, so that's how many days it is, and then times 7. So that'll be the number of weeks. And using that same sort of procedure, we can do the rest. I won't bother typing it all in. I'll just cut and paste it from what I've done before. But you get the idea. So you're going to have days, weeks, and hours, and minutes, and seconds. You can cut and paste this, or you can take your time going through and figuring out how it all works, but that'll give you the values that you need. And then once we've got those, so every second this will run, it'll get the time that it is right now, it'll take it off the time that we're going to, it'll come up with a value, and it'll work that value into all these 5 variables here to give you the number of weeks, days, hours, minutes, and seconds that are left between right now, this particular second, and the date that we've provided. What we then need to do is obviously put those variables into these boxes. So the way we do that on the fly with JavaScript is we'll use query select is probably the best one. There's lots of different ways of targeting things, but query select is probably the best. So we'll look for the ID of weeks, and then down from weeks we'll look for the countdown digits. And then when we get to there, the inner HTML, which is the code that's actually inside the countdown digits, we're going to say that equals weeks. And when you save that, you'll see when it refreshes every second, it's going to check what the value is and put it in that weeks box there. Do the same with all the others. So we'll look for the ID of days, we'll look for the ID of hours, look for the ID of minutes, and the ID of seconds. Save that, and as if by magic, there you go, you've got your countdown timer. Now you could leave it like that, there's nothing particularly wrong with leaving it like that. The only downside is when you get to a single digit, let's say you were counting down to the 22nd of December, it would say 1 days as opposed to 1 day. Now, how much that bothers you is up to you. For me, it really bothers me. So we'll have to put a bit more code in to figure that out. How do we change that from days, from the plural to the singular? And that was the reason, obviously, why before the plural, the S, we put it inside its own span. It's so we can target it now and either leave it in there or take it out, depending on what the value is in the box. And to do that, again, a bit more JavaScript. We're going to create another variable. We'll just call this y. We'll say it equals document, so we'll grab the document, query selector all, and we're going to be looking for countdown digits, it was, wasn't it? So what this is going to do, y is now going to be a variable that's going to store in an array every instance of the countdown digits class that it finds. That's why we're using classes, that's why we're using query selector all, so we can just pull all 5 of them into the one variable. Then we're going to create another variable, we're just going to call it I. and we're going to do a little for loop. You'll see what the I is for in a minute. It stands for iterations in this instance. We'll create a for loop there. Emmet will fill in some bits for us. So we'll say that let I equal 0 up until when I is less than the array length of the array, which we called Y. So what this is going to do quite simply is run through a for loop, starting I at 0 for index or iteration, whatever you want to call it. I'll start at 0, and then it'll keep running through this until I is while I is less than the length of Y. And each time it'll do it, it'll take I up by 1. So we'll start off with I at 0, then it'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it'll finish. And inside this, we're going to be putting an if statement. So we're going to be looking at Y, which is the array, and the actual record in the array that we're using. Well, initial one will be 0, but we'll replace that with I. So it'll dynamically generate 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 as it runs through the loop. And we're going to look at inner HTML and see if it equals 1. So it's going to start off, it's going to create this array, it's going to get all the dot countdown digits, it's going to look at the first dot countdown digits, which in this case is going to be 15, and it's going to say, is the text inside that the number 1? That's simply all it's doing. If it is, it'll do something. If it's not, it'll do something else. So what do we want it to do if the digit is 1? We basically want to get rid of that S there inside the span. We don't want that to be there if it's a 1. So the way we do that, again, we'll target it using the variable and the iteration that we're currently in. And we'll go to the next element sibling. So that'll basically take us from this box here down to this next element. And then when we're in there, we'll use the query selector to find the span. And then in the span, inner HTML, in this case, will be nothing because we don't want the S. If it doesn't equal 1, i.e. it's a number or it's 0, then obviously we do want the S. And that's all there is to it. Like I said, it'll iterate through that loop 5 times. Let's get rid of that. Something's gone wrong. Let me just have a quick look. Oh yeah, I didn't say what the I don't know why I put an equals in there. Having a moment. There you go. So that's all you need to do. Because the day is 1, you'll see that it says day as opposed to days. When you refresh it, everything will have an S in it, and then as it runs this this function every second, it'll see if there's a value of 1 in there, and it'll change. It'll either get rid of the S if there is, or it'll make sure it adds an S if there isn't. So we watch the seconds countdown now. You'll see when it gets to 1, it'll change to second, and then 0 will change back to seconds again. So that's it. That's how to do the countdown timer. Because this is a responsive site, we need to make a couple of tweaks to the CSS because it'll start to look bad on mobile phones and any smaller screen really. So we'll go up here to the media query section. I'll just put a little bit more CSS in here. I think some of the general stuff's okay, but we'll just put a few other things in just to make sure it fits on the screen a bit better. We'll start with the padding, I think. Just change this to CSS for my code hinting. And we'll make this say 1 pixel. In fact, let's bring the size of the screen down. Yeah, it just brings everything a little bit closer together, much better. Those digits are obviously far too big. When we're doing CSS for mobile, I like to use the viewport width as the dimension. I think that's very handy because then it won't just change the particular digits to one size for all mobile devices. It'll look at the actual size of the window that you're trying to view it in and scale them accordingly. So it's basically infinitely scalable. So rather than using EMs or pixel sizes, we're going to use a VW. So let's say 6 VW. Yeah, that looks about right. And so now obviously as it gets smaller or bigger, you can see the text is getting bigger and subsequently the boxes are getting bigger with it, which makes it look nice and obviously nice and easily readable. So we'll also change the countdown text. We'll change the font size on that to 2 VW. Yeah, that's probably about right. Okay, that's it. That's how you add a countdown timer. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, the code relating to the JavaScript at the bottom, once you've written that once, obviously you can just grab it and cut and paste it into new products and into new projects if you want. You don't need to do it again. So yeah, that's how you do it. And there's our fully working holding page with the video background and the countdown timer. And obviously you can change this to anything you want. Works fine. So yeah, that's that. I hope you liked the video. If you did enjoy it, please do stick a like on it. Do get subscribed and click the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go up. As I said, this is part 3 of this particular small series doing the basic coming soon page using HTML, CSS, bit of JavaScript. There will be more. If there's anything else you'd like to see in this series or anything else you'd like to see a tutorial on, do please make a note in the comments. Like I said, give us a like because the more likes we get, the more videos like this we can produce. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.